Let's now take a look at the article by Hull and Leo titled Innovation in Nonprofit and For-Profit Organizations, Visionary, Strategic, and Financial Considerations. Nonprofit organizations face a number of unique challenges when compared to for-profit companies. Nonprofits have a social responsibility. They have limits on their strategic abilities, and they have limits on their financial actions. Nonprofits have different motivations than for-profits. These differences fall into three categories: vision, strategic constraints, and financial constraints. These differences each significantly impact the innovation strategies they employ. Each contribute to an organization's ability and willingness to take strategic actions. The chart at the bottom illustrates the differences. .com, or for-profit companies, have a greater self-interest, and their motivation is profit. They can be considered cold and hard, and have some considered to have evil tendencies. Nonprofits, on the other hand, or .orgs, often are charities. They have an altruistic purpose. They rely a lot on volunteers. Their profit is not money, but service. They're thought of as warm and fluffy with friendly tendencies. Now let's dig deep into the differences between for-profit and nonprofit organizations. The model from the text focuses on an organization's vision, strategic constraints, and financial constraints. These three areas effectively define the organization. It defines what is the organization trying to do, how can they go about doing it, and what resources can they do it with. The answers to these questions determine how an organization is structured and how it conducts its business. The article defines a number of areas of difference in private, public, and third-party or nonprofit organizations, specifically ownership, revenues, scope of impact, markets, performance expectations, and incentives. The author's work is based on a strategic constraint concept, but is related to the work of strategic controls by Hitt and others, strategic choice theory, and Porter's discussion of the nature of strategy. Vision acts as a guide for an organization, a central reference point that focuses an organization and directs its strategy. It is the ultimate goal of the organization. For-profits versus nonprofits have very different visions and very different structures and policies to reach those visions. A for-profit's ultimate vision could be argued to consist primarily of increasing profits to maximize a shareholder's financial value, while the for-profit's public mission statement might reflect what its managers consider important to the pursuit of that goal. For a nonprofit organization, the vision would be defined by a charter and public mission statements, creating a significantly more complicated organizational goal. Most organizations have both mission and vision statements and they do distinctly different jobs. Mission statements define the organization's purpose and primary objectives. These statements are set in the present tense, and they explain why the organization exists as a business, both to members of the organization and to people outside of it. Mission statements tend to be short, clear, and powerful. The examples here include ConocoPhillips, which is a gas and energy company. Their mission is to power civilization. Nike, the well-known athletic company, has as its mission to bring inspiration and innovation to every athlete in the world. Chestnut Health Systems, which is a large nonprofit located in the Midwest United States, has as its mission statement, making a difference, improving quality of life through excellence in service. Vision statements also define an organization's purpose, but they focus on its goals and aspirations. These statements are designed to be uplifting and inspiring. They're also timeless. Even if the organization changes its strategy, the vision statement can often stay the same. Within the vision category of the author's model in Figure 1 displayed at the left are two areas: scope of impact, which looks at the total effect of an organization's actions, and performance expectations, which incorporate the goals of an organization and the standards against which it is measured. Scope of impact examines the extent of an organization's impact on society. For profit-based companies, scope of impact may have little if any weight in decision making, due to the fact that the determining factor in decisions is typically profitability as opposed to societal change. As a rule, nonprofits are less concerned with than for-profit organizations with financial gain, though this is a relative difference, not an absolute one. In nonprofit organizations, matters involving financial gain are complicated by many other factors. Nonprofits must weigh societal change against the generation of revenue. Organizations supported by non-transactional sources of funding, such as grants and donations, might face a choice between serving a greater number of clients and providing superior services to a smaller number of clients. Other issues may also arise, such as a conflict between the organization's specific goals and those of a potential or current funding organization. Performance expectations are the criteria used to measure an organization's success. For-profits equate to a measure of change in shareholder wealth. Nonprofits must evaluate performance based upon legal constraints, the original mandate of the organization, evolving external factors, and the current interests of internal decision makers. In other words, the needs of a widely diverse group of stakeholders. This creates such a complicated measure of performance that any objective measurement of success practically disappears. The chart on the right outlines expectations and behavior. For-profit organizations can look at this in a pretty straightforward manner. If they practice what they consider to be rational behavior and have high expectations, that's a normal state of being for a for-profit organization and a nonprofit organization as well. The problem is behavior. Nonprofit organizations have different motivations, therefore their behavior may be different and is motivated by different outcomes. This may result in having high expectations, but engage in behaviors that may be considered irrational, which can be a very tough spot, depending on the decision makers and the stakeholders and the various impacts that affect those decisions. Strategic constraints are the second of the three-part model from the text. They determine what an organization can do when faced with a number of choices that it might consider. External circumstances and the nature of the organization's resources are typical strategic constraints. Here, we focus on those constraints most relevant to the differences between for-profit organizations and nonprofit organizations. Stakeholders, including among for-profit companies, stockholders, are one such constraint. Because nonprofits and for-profits differ more in the way they are organized than in the limits of their stakeholders, we focus on organizational constraints. The authors discuss two organizational constraints that fall within the strategic constraint category: ownership and responsibility. Both nonprofits and for-profit organizations are responsible for their actions to local, legal, and government officials, the general public, their employees, and the people affected by their service. For-profits are primarily responsible to their shareholders. Nonprofits are responsible to their supporters and to almost all other stakeholders more or less equally. Nonprofits often lack a standard method for evaluating success. Even when a nonprofit can increase a factor that clearly is a component of success, this may not serve to satisfy supporters of the organization more concerned with a different component. A for-profit organization is much more free to spend in the pursuit of profit and is often required to do so.